Nairobi, Kenya. He's an anchor and producer at entertainment channel NTV. Larry, good to see you, my friend. So, are people walking the streets of Nairobi shouting Wakanda forever? Tell us about the reaction there on the continent to this movie.
There is excitement, Aisha, all over the continent, not just in Lagos. Here in Nairobi, I'm dressed like this because everybody's going to the movie super excited to see a superhero that looks like us in a positive role. Wakanda, this fictional African country, is in East Africa, so not too far from Kenya, where I am. And really, for a film industry, for Hollywood that has so many white saviors, it's beautiful to see finally an African superhero in this kind of role. The excitement all over the continent is unbelievable.
Yeah, I can only imagine. You know, Africans versus African Americans relate to this film differently, given obviously our distinct relationships with, with the continent. Tell me more about what is resonating with Africans as they watch this film, beyond the fact that obviously Chadwick Boseman, looks like us. I mean, talk to me about what else people are focused on.
So, in my own sense, having watched the movie, Aisha, was that it was an African-American's approximation of African culture. So this movie celebrates blackness, but not Africanness. But that's okay, because Lupita Nyong'o is Kenyan, Danai Gurira is amazing Zimbabwean American, there's Daniel Kaluuya in there, and they all work so great together. I feel the accents are a bit forced. They try to do Xhosa accent from South Africa, some bit of it in Nigerian. But the representation of the costumes, for instance, the costumes are spectacular. And the women wear their hair natural, which is a big deal because in Africa still, kinky hair is still not considered professional. And then these women are very empowered. It is an egalitarian society which is not patriarchal as in many black cultures. So there's a lot of, I think, parallels that can be drawn to real life based on what the movie portrays.
How do you think, Larry, this film will change the ongoing narrative about the continent here in the West?
One of the things I loved about the film in Wakanda is that it was not colonized. It's free of European influence. There's British or German or Spanish or English, that was not there. But also it shows this very powerful, the richest country in the world that has excess of vibranium, this mineral that is also fictional, but also that Africans are capable of being their own and holding their own on the international stage, and that is a very big deal because the continent is often kind of caricatured and badly misunderstood because people just don't make enough efforts to, dig deep, and this movie starts to shine a spotlight on all of those different aspects that perhaps are not seen on the global stage.
Yeah, I mean, the very fact that people still think that Africa is a country. I mean, let's start there.
It's not.
Exactly. Don't know how many times I'm going to have to say that in my lifetime, but I'm ready to keep saying it. Listen, I mean, the fact of the matter is, the other point in all of this is for African Americans, the point, as I sit here in America, is I hear a lot of African Americans, really talking about, feeling a newborn sense of pride in the continent. That for them, this is like the first time that they're seeing the continent in such a beautiful, empowered, resplendent way. Do we think, and this is more kind of, I guess, an intellectual question, but do we think that this will in some way better the relationship between Africans and African Americans?
I hope it does, because in my experience, there's a lot of animus between the two groups, Black Americans and Africans. Even in the U.S., there's some distrust. They have derogatory names for each other. But this has given a new appreciation for the motherland, as they call Africa. And maybe they're starting to think again that there's so much beauty and there's so much character in the continent that maybe we don't know, because what we know, again, is based on popular culture, how we're portrayed in Hollywood, in the global media. And they're starting to think again, like, I need to make a trip to Ghana, to Kenya, to South Africa, and get to appreciate for myself and maybe understand my African brothers that already live within my community that I didn't really pay much attention to before.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. Do you think that this film will have a lasting impact on other films that come out, on art, and other creations that come out of Hollywood in the near future or beyond the near future? I think the near future, we can safely say it probably will, but do you think it will carry on past, the immediate moment?
It has to carry on because it has shown that, one, there is certainly a global interest in stories like these on minorities or people of color with black leads. And Hollywood has to start doing more. Look at the success of Get Out, for instance, again, which had Daniel Kaluuya. These stories don't typically come from big movie studios like Marvel, like Disney, but when they do, like this one has shown, look at the 5th biggest opening of all time, I think more of these needs to happen, and I hope that Hollywood is paying attention and seeing that not just for black people, for African Americans, for Africans, but these are stories that are universal for every other, for basically the human condition, I think, beyond people for whom see themselves represented on screen. Aisha.
I mean, I think it's fairly safe to assume you like the film, bearing the fact you're channeling Wakanda with your outfit. But just in case anyone's uncertain, did you like the film or did you love the film?
I loved the film. I can't wait to go watch it again. I watched it about a week before it opened, and yes, everybody needs to go out and watch it. It's worth your time, absolutely.
All right, Madowo, it's such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for the view of Black Panther from the continent. It is very much appreciated. Thank you.
My pleasure.
You can't stop.